I've been thinking, as I always do, and what's been taking up some of my brain power are some of the promotional posters for the Dragon Prince because I have a really strange relationship with time, and I think the Dragon Prince seems to experience something similar, so let's just dive on it. During season 5, we got these two posters of our opposing trios titled Lost and Found, and at the time of season 5, the premise of the season was the protagonists trying to prevent Aaravos from being set free and what to do in the case that he does. Now, it may or may not have been a little bit anticlimactic when the purpose of the season turned out to just be to actually find the prison. But the point is, Aaravos being set free was always inevitable, right? You don't introduce a character that is imprisoned without at some point setting him free. So the question was not if he would be set free, the real question was how. And these season 5 posters were so interesting to me because, well, one, because they're so beautiful, like just look at them, but two, because I thought they were leaning into this mystery of how it's going to happen, right? Because with these posters, we are told that the Dark Trio found while the Primal Trio lost. But at the end of that season, Aaravos has in fact not been set free, and it's our Dark Trio who are the ones who lost, and our Primal Trio are the ones who found the prison. That is all to say that these posters really threw me in for a loop, and of course I do think errors occur in the Dragon Prince, but also I didn't think that's what this was. I knew that this was intentional, I just didn't get it yet. So basically, this is one of the things that I kind of kept in the back of my mind. And now in season 6, these posters make much more sense. Or at least the titles, right? Our primal trio may have gotten to the prison first, but they lost track of it. First, in the sense that Callum and Rayla took the wrong one, and at this point in time, they are not aware of that fact. But also, the prison was lost in the rubble, and now the prison is actually non existent because Arvos is now free. Right? So they lost. Then we have our Dark Trio who not only lost the race to the Pearl, but also did not manage to get their hands on it during season 5, but just so happened to come across it as a result of Aaravos' puppeteering or contingency planning. It's unclear if the title is more a reference to Aaravos being the one who is finding them, specifically Claudia, instead of like the other way around. So, yeah, that's the gist of it, really. My point was just to say that these season 5 posters only make sense with season 6 hindsight. But as I mentioned, time is a bit of a malleable, confusing conundrum for me, and I did not get to analyze these posters at the time that they were released. I just wasn't making videos yet, but here I am, and better late than never. So let's analyze what we're seeing in these posters. We're gonna start with Found, and here we have our Dark Trio, which, by the way, I know I said it already, but just wow, these posters are so beautiful. I mean, I'm still thinking about them a year later, so that's how good they are. Props to the artist, that unfortunately I don't know who it is, but beautiful work. But that aside, here we have our team leader, who is obviously Claudia. We see that her hair is braided, and of course, we know that that's because of Terry. And with season 6 hindsight, we know that she cuts her hair. Well, Terry also cuts it for her. And I definitely find hair so interesting. Like, that scene was so emotionally charged for me. And actually, that entire sequence. And as a mentally unstable girly, actually, enough said, okay? Right now's not the time. I hope that we get to have that conversation another time, but yeah, anyway, it technically kind of started in the comments of my review. Shout out to Laura, by the way, who is always catching on to such interesting details. But yeah, back to this poster. Shout out to you, by the way. Back to this poster, we see Claudia determined and facing forth. And interestingly, she's the only one doing that. We will compare the posters, but it's so interesting that this trio is really disjointed, right? Like, Terry is in his own little world. He literally has his eyes closed, smelling a flower. He is naturally wholesome. And of course, with the smelling of a flower, it's giving like he's the type of person to stop and smell the roses, right? And that makes sense because he is connected to the earth primal, and earthy characters can be associated with being present, and that's what stopping to smell the roses means to me. But in this illustration, you know what it's giving? It's giving disassociation, right? Like he is so out of place in this trio. And when we look at his body language too, he is not facing the same direction as Claudia. He's facing to the left, or, his right. Audience left. The point is, he happens to be there, but he's not aligned with what's happening here. And I think this is something that happens a lot with his character, where he turns a blind eye to what's happening. Like, we saw him struggle after having to kill Ibis, and while that has not been brought up again, I'm sure that this is something that weighs on him, and I think that perhaps his way of coping is, of course, to focus on the good things and, stopping to smell the roses. Then we have Viren, who is mostly in line with Claudia. He seems to be facing forth for the most part, except for the fact that his face is turned sideways. His sight is no longer on the same price as Claudia. And with his hand, this is giving like hesitation. And of course, we saw the seed of his hesitation in season 4, and the roots sort of took hold in season 5, where he's stuck in a dream and then he's unresponsive when he wakes up. And of course, I interpret his catatonic stage as an internal battle and a dissonance between his mind, heart, and body. Like, in his heart, he doesn't want the corruption and the darkness, but habit is a tough beast to conquer. But that's this poster. Let's look at the next one. In the Lost poster, our leader is Callum, who interestingly has his eyes closed and is looking down. And I find this really interesting. And also, please feel free to tag timestamps and tell me your interpretations to all these details, because I definitely want to know how you guys are interpreting this. But when I first saw this, I couldn't help but think of Harrow. And I know, okay, what can I say? I'm obsessed. I love the man. But this idea of closing your eyes is something that I naturally associate with Harrow, not only because he turned a blind eye to Viren for a long time, but because his ideal was to be impartial, and that's what Lady Justice's blindfold represents. So when I saw Callum this way, I naturally thought of it in response to Claudia. Like, she is his enemy. He needs to close his heart to the fact that she was once his friend and love interest even, but with his fists clenched, he is determined to face what's coming. Or at least that's how I'm interpreting it. Definitely let me know your thoughts in the wicked depths below. Then we move on to Ezran, who is standing defiant. And while he is, interestingly enough, behind Callum, he actually strikes me as the most determined of the three. He's facing forth, his shoulders are squared, his eyes are open, and he seems to see the enemy clearly. Like, he's at the ready. And of course, his pose is also very reminiscent of Harrow. I absolutely love him, and I also find this really interesting because at this point, I feel like Ezran is really lost. Like, I think he knows who he is and what he stands for, that's for sure, but navigating the world is an entirely different thing, and I feel like that's what he's struggling with, like the fact that the world is not really like him. And I feel like that makes him doubt himself because he's in a position of power. And while I think the integrity of Ezran is the one that will remain intact the most, I really look forward to seeing what they do with him in season 7 and beyond, because I feel like he is a character that wants to have an influence in the world, but that's not a one-way street. Just as you can change the world also changes you. And I really feel like the Dreamer's Nightmare graphic novel could actually be an exploration of Ezran's character. I haven't read it yet, it's just a whisper from the moon based on the first few pages that are available. I really feel like something happens in that graphic novel that could be something that sticks with him. I just don't know what that is yet. And if you want to make sure that I read the novel, definitely treat your girl to a coffee. I'd love that. I'll send you a moonbeam of gratitude. But let's get back to this poster and talk about Rayla, who is the most distracted out of the three. Like, her body language is facing the same direction as the trio, and even her face is facing forth, but her eyes are looking to the right. Girl, audience right, okay? Rayla's left, you get it. So this is just really interesting because, of course, we don't actually know what our characters are looking at, so I can't say. I only know that Rayla is distracted. And this could be because this is actually a season 5 poster, so she could be worried about the coins. It could also be the case that Callum and Ezran focus on Claudia and Viren as the enemy, but Rayla has her eyes set on how to kill a starter shelf, even though she's very clearly not about that life and didn't even choose to get the Nova Blade to begin with. Anyway, the point is, the Primal Trio is pretty in line except for Rayla, who is distracted, and we're not sure why Callum has his eyes closed, but the fact that they face the same direction tells me that they want the same thing. Now, if we look at the posters together, we can see how they differ. Our Primal Trio is more coherent, while the Dark Trio look like they're likely to split ways. And oh, I haven't even mentioned the water, but of course that's important. And again, keeping in mind that this is actually a season 5 poster, the Ocean Primal is the focal point. As it pertains to Claudia, the motif of her being in water is actually something that I associate with her descending into darkness or corruption. The depths overwhelm Claudia. When it comes to Callum in season 5, he is attempting to understand the Ocean Primal, and in fact, he really should have listened to Vila's advice because not only does he understand the Sky Arcanum, but actually the ocean too. And if you recall, his advice was that life is like a river. He tells Rayla that you can't see too far ahead. You don't know where the river of life will bend and turn. You don't know where it'll go at all. Don't try to control where the river goes. There's just one thing you can know and control: yourself. Who are you? What do you stand for? Once you know that, then wherever the river takes you, you'll be right where you were always meant to be. And that's the secret of the primal that Callum discovers in season 5. He can't control the waves. He has to go with the flow. He can't see everything. He can't know everything, even about himself. And he certainly can't control everything around him. So the ocean is pretty significant, and we even see that in how the water is portrayed because the water in the Primal Trio is dark, which falls in line with the Arcanum about there being depths that you can't see. But the trio knows what it stands for, so the depths aren't as intimidating, perhaps. On the other hand, the water on the Dark Trio is illuminated, and I don't know what this could symbolize, but I attribute this phenomenon to the sun because I think that for the Dark Trio, the sun is actually setting, and for our Primal Trio, the sun is rising. I don't know that for sure, but that's just what makes sense to me symbolically, but I am inclined to believe that because in the last poster, the sun seems to be rising, and when the sun starts to rise, the darkness recedes, and you can see how the stars are fading in the background. But also you can see how the water glimmers from the light of the sun behind them. In the found poster, if the sun is actually setting, then the glimmer of light on the water will fade very quickly. And when the sun sets is when we start to make out more stars. And in this poster, we see that the stars are shining bright. So that's what's making me think that while this poster is much brighter in comparison, the sun is actually setting. So yeah, I know that was a whole spiel about posters from like 2 years ago. Oh, 1 year ago? Girl, at this point I don't know, but I just find them so visually stunning, and of course I think that they're still relevant, not only because the titles make sense now, but also because I think this is foreshadowing for Terry's future. We know that Viren did end up going his own way. Terry now needs to open his eyes and do the same, and we've already seen hints to this version of Ezran who is strong and determined. I think that we will see more of this. I'm not sure if Rayla's distractedness is ongoing or if it was just happening because of the coins, so that is to be seen. But I think that's all I have to say on this. Except for the fact that the series of Aaravos' posters seem to fall under the same category as these ones, where I think they'll make more sense with hindsight. So we now have confirmation that the Rune Cube is a key to that book, but the book itself will probably come into play in season 7, or maybe even beyond. I'm just not sure. Time is really tricky with the Dragon Prince, but yeah, we'll probably revisit those posters next year. Definitely let me know all your thoughts on these beautiful Lost and Found posters because I don't know, they're just so wonderfully illustrated, and I feel like there's so much to extract here. But yeah, did you notice something that I didn't mention? What were your first impressions on them? Did it change after season 5 and now season 6? I'd love to know. If you enjoyed this video, show me your love by hitting the pretty like button, subscribe if you want to be a part of this beautiful moon nexus, and hit the bell if you want to be notified whenever the stars align. But until then, Tenebras post Lux.